This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. Hello and welcome back to the podcast for 2026. In this episode, I'm joined by Robin Singh, a former tech entrepreneur turned animal rescuer and author, to explore what it really means to live a purposeful life and sustainability, but quickly digs deeper into ideas of happiness, existential crisis, and the search for meaning. Drawing on Robin's journey from corporate success to running an animal rescue and growing his own food, the episode reflects on reducing suffering, finding purpose over pleasure, and how small, thoughtful choices can help us live more intentionally, especially at the start of a new year.
So, originally, if we talk about my career, I started as a hacker and eventually I ended up running a tech company in the US. And then I exited that because for me, that was just means to an end. I just wanted to be financially independent. And once I got there, I quit that. And now I run an animal rescue and I grow my own food. And the book I wrote was something I discovered in this journey from being a techie to now doing what I do because I had stumbled across this purpose of animal rescue while searching for happiness. And at that point, I had just given up on happiness and I stumbled across purpose and then I pursued purpose and found happiness. So that's what the book is about what happened to me, some of the mistakes I made in my thought process, some of the deliberate decisions, and an analysis of how this makes sense that I couldn't be happy when I was searching for it, and then I got happy when I had given up on it.
Yeah, and to start with, the book is excellent. I loved it. It was really matter of fact and written very plainly, so it just makes perfect sense when you read it. And talking of happiness, I think there are maybe two things to unpack there. So one is that perhaps happiness isn't what people perceive it to be, and the second part of that is, does that shift depending on where you are in your life as well? Does your definition of happiness shift, and what makes you kind of happy, does that change as you go along?
I'd say, but I do think our definition of happiness shifts as we grow older. But I think that's more a matter of discovering what it truly is and not perspective. I'll unpack that a little. Like when we are younger, because nobody actually gives us a definition of happiness. It's not taught in school, it's not taught in family. So we just kind of assume that feeling joy is happiness, feeling pleasure, that's happiness. But ultimately these states are not lasting states, because something that gives you joy today, tomorrow you'll need more of it to give you the same joy. Same thing with pleasure. So happiness, I think, a good definition for me is happiness is absence of suffering, absence of physical, emotional, and existential suffering. And as we grow older and we realize that, so there is that discovery of what it is, and then it's discovering the path that can lead to that cessation of suffering.
Thinking about the people who listen to the podcast, I know personally a lot of people who've chosen gardening or horticulture as a second career. And a lot of people follow that dream. And I believe I'm right in saying that you did something similar. You know, you followed that dream where you left the corporate world behind and you went and decided to set up as a smallholder or a homesteader. And then it maybe that wasn't the path to happiness that you thought it was. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, that is correct. And at that point, I couldn't define happiness. I had just this romantic idea, probably from watching a few documentaries and reading a lot about sustainability, rainwater harvesting, homesteading. I had this idea that if I could just live off the land, I could be happy. So on my quest to happiness, after I gave up my tech career, the first stop was, okay, let me go get a piece of land and set up there. But when I went there and saw that life, I could analyze that, yeah, sure, I'd be spending my hours differently. And certainly there would be more joy in it. But the existential suffering I was going through, I did not see how this would take care of that. This was definitely a better distraction, a better indulgence, but that was not going to be the way to happiness for me.
Yeah, and you mentioned existential crisis in the book. Talk me through what happened, when you were facing that situation.
We always have some sort of a goal growing up. There's always education, job, finding a partner, settling down. There's always some sort of a goal. The first time I had like a proper tangible goal that I gave myself was that I want to be in absolute control of my 24 hours. I don't want to sell my time to society anymore just for survival. And it was just pure dumb luck that I set my goal to 24 hours and not like a fancy house or a big car. Because when I achieved that goal, I did not know what should be my next goal. The system broke. Usually, people keep shifting the goalpost. If they wanted a big house, now they want a bigger house. If they wanted a fancy vehicle, now they want a fancier vehicle. For me, I was like, I don't know where to shift the goalpost, and the system broke. And it gave me that pause that a lot of people don't get to think about, like, what now, and just made me analyze our whole life, that it's just distracting us from the core question of, like, we are always solving how to live or what to do while we are living, but we are not thinking, why are we living? So once I got to that point where I didn't have to work for my survival, that's all I could think about, that, why am I living? Because it just wasn't even a pleasant state. If it was a pleasant state, I probably would not have thought of it. I mean, I had a lot of pleasure. I had a lot of pleasure in my life, but I still felt inside, I felt unhappy. And I don't think getting my goal produced that unhappiness. It just brought me face to face with it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the need for a purpose in order to kind of complete the picture, I suppose. But can you apply that logic when you're searching for a purpose? And I think some people feel hamstrung by the fact that they may find a purpose, but then they think it through maybe in their head and think, well, my purpose could be this, but unless I can achieve it to a huge degree, it may not be worth doing. And I think that can paralyze people. So, how do you get around applying that kind of chasing the bigger picture, chasing the next goal when you apply it to your purpose?
So the overarching purpose gives you a general direction of life where everything you do pulls you in that direction. So it's not necessarily a destination. But so, for example, my purpose is I want to reduce suffering in the world. There's never going to be a time where I'm able to reduce all the suffering in the world. So, as long as I have that purpose and as long as I can work towards it, it takes care of my existential suffering. I know what am I living for. I know what I'm waking up for. I know how am I spending my time. And it also gives me a great litmus test for all my decisions, because people get paralyzed by, oh, I am getting pulled in this direction or that. What should I do? For me, that answer gets really, really simplified by having this purpose, which I can work towards. So anything that takes me closer to it is something I want to do.
Yeah, you mentioned in the book to acknowledge the limitations to what you do. So, for example, you've set parameters and said, I'm only going to operate in this region. I'm only going to do these things. Sometimes when you have a purpose, you can burn out if you don't regulate your time. And, you have to put it into perspective, I guess, is what I'm saying. You are part of a bigger picture. You cannot solve all the problems. And I think given the situation globally, people are just overwhelmed. So it's important to remind yourself that you are making a difference, but maybe at a smaller scale, but it's still important.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't turn you complacent. So, it's a slippery slope. You gotta give it your best. At the same time, realize that what you do is just one factor among billions of other factors. So you have to quote unquote know your place in the world. It goes to that serenity period. You have to be able to differentiate between what you can change and what you can't change, and accept that. And then put all your energy into changing what you can. And it gets easier with time. I mean, it's easier said than done, but with time, when you mindfully keep bringing your focus back to what you can change and not think about all the wars and all the horrible things which are beyond your control, you're able to convince yourself that, I owe it to my work to not think about all the horrible things in the world that I have no control on.
And I like your definition of a purpose being to reduce suffering. And obviously, that's something that's very pertinent when you're working with animals, because as you say in the book, they don't have a voice for themselves. Would you say that relieving suffering is the right way forward generally, or is it the right way forward for you?
It depends on how empathetic you are. If you are, say, the kind of person who, because of nature or nurture, do not have a whole lot of empathy, and all you can think about is yourself, or maybe you think about you and your family, then of course you don't have a big cross to carry. On the flip side, finding a purpose won't be as easy for you, because then the few options are, because you always need an infinite chase to fill the infinite existential void. You need an infinite chase. If that infinite chase is not reducing suffering, then it would be what? Like making money or fame or power. And these things, again, you need to do more of what you're doing every day. Whereas when we talk about reducing suffering, I can just keep doing the same thing every day and feel the same amount of contentment. So to bottom line it, I'll say if you're not empathetic, you are freer to do what you want to do. But if you have empathy, then the only thing that makes sense is to reduce suffering. And that's because we have a suffering footprint. So even if we are not these big consumers, just by virtue of living, we cause suffering.
And is the goal for you to reduce that suffering footprint in the knowledge that you can't eliminate it?
I see it in two parts. One is the way I live. So I have to live in a way that I have a small suffering footprint as far as practically possible. The big part of the equation is why to live. Why not just take yourself out of this equation? And that is live to reduce suffering actively. So one is not doing bad, and the other is to actively do good.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way, because the natural conclusion of that train of thought is, if I'm causing suffering, why am I here? So, yeah, I think that's a very kind of healthy and reassuring way to look at things. One of my questions when I was reading the book, and I think again, this will apply to a certain proportion of the listeners, because perhaps they've come to horticulture later in life, they've perhaps had careers where they've made money, maybe they live fairly comfortably now, or they don't have such money concerns. But do you think you would be where you are now if you didn't make the money earlier in your life? Do you think that you would have come to this conclusion? Is it easier for you, I guess is what I'm asking, to live in this way if you have some kind of cushion behind you?
Short answer, absolutely yes. But we have to look at it in two components. One is where you have enough money, where you don't have to spend all your 8 hours just working. And that can be achieved if, say, you even do a part-time job and your expenses are low. So you don't have to completely be financially independent to get to that point. Thing is, we just never pause. So I think people who are younger, like, who've just just gotten out of college, haven't started their job, are traveling, they do get that period to think about it. Second is, let's say, you come to this realization, I need to live to reduce suffering in the world. I want to spend my life doing service. Where am I going to get the resources to do that? So the thing is, you have to look at the resources you already have, the abilities you have, your circumstances, and then come up with a plan that fits it. So you start small and you can always gradually grow it. So let's say if I had not exited a tech company and I didn't have resources to buy this piece of land and set this up, what I would have done is, we are in Himachal Pradesh in India, and there's like a lot of travelers around here. So what I would have done is rented an old mud house, turned it into a homestay. I would have had a source of income from that, and I would have just rescued, say, 6 dogs a month. So I would have just downsized my plan to fit the resources I have. And then as I got support from more people, as the word got out, then gradually grew it.
Yes, makes perfect sense. Do you find that when you are on the right path, you are kind of almost cosmically assisted, things just fall into place?
100%. I mean, see, it's one of those things that you know them to be true, but you cannot prove them. It's a feeling thing. But yeah, like I look at my life and I think just because I have chosen to walk this path, a lot of things just fall in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is something divine.
And so your farm is named after the peepal tree. I wondered, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, so apologies, but I wondered if you could just explain the significance of that.
You pronounce it perfect, actually. So there were a lot of reasons why we chose this name. One is in cities in India, you see this tree, it pops up on top of buildings, and then its roots, they cause fractures in these old walls and they create space for new growth. And nobody plants these trees, they just come up. They come up from bird droppings. So, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to cause fractures in this obsolete thought process which objectifies animals and makes space for new growth. So that was one of the reasons why we call ourselves People Farm. The second reason was that the people tree is a big tree, but still, however big it gets, it's in a finite area. And I had realized that this work can only be scaled by sharing it. And so, just like a bird would take a people tree's fruit and drop it elsewhere, and then another tree comes up, that's how we wanted to do it. We wanted to scale our work by sharing it, by inspiring other people to do this work in any shape or form, wherever they are. It was an English pun, it's a funny pun. It's people, the tree, and people, as in, other people like you and me. So that was another reason.
Excellent. Yeah, I love it. It's great. I like the fact that you put that amount of thought into the naming the place. So at the moment, obviously you're rescuing animals, and I wondered if you could just tell me a little bit more about that. And are you still growing things on the farm?
Yeah, absolutely. So we grow a lot of our veggies. We don't grow lentils or grains a whole lot, but we do a lot of veggies. We grow our oil seed. We also have to grow a lot of fodder for the cows we rescue and that we have ended up adopting. So initially, when we started, we were just doing treatments on the street. We would, people will tell us, oh, this animal's injured. We would go, we would treat the animal. Then we started a recovery space where we would bring in the animals. And unlike Western world, we have a lot of stray animals, mostly dogs and cows, but sometimes we get donkeys and horses too. So all the animals that people don't eat, you get to rescue on the street if they get injured. Now we have also set up a proper hospital. It has an X-ray, it has an ultrasound, and like people know our rescue line because there's no government animal control or there's no animal helpline by the government. So in the neighboring areas, when an animal gets injured, somebody does something horrible to an animal because there's a lot of cruelty, we send our vehicle and rescue the animal. Sometimes we have to use these dart guns to capture a large bull or a large cow. Then we bring them here. We have our vets here in house and we do the diagnosis, and then the animals stay with us for the whole treatment. The unfortunate part is that we do rescue, recovery, and then release. So the animals have to be released back to where we picked them from because we have over 1,000 rescue cases a year and we can't keep them. We don't have space to keep animals. We are a hospital. But there are animals like, let's say, a cow whose leg has to be amputated, or or there's a blind puppy or a blind calf, then we have to keep them here. And so right now we have over 40 resident animals and 22 animals waiting for adoption. So yeah, that's the long and short of our rescue operation here.
Wow. You are busy, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you're making a fantastic difference. And again, I don't know quite how you manage your time and manage to balance everything you do, but I'm very glad that you made time to write the book because, as I said, I really enjoyed it personally and it just makes so much sense. And one of the quotes that you use in it, which I think is a good one to remember, particularly, as I said at the start, at this time of the year when people are maybe thinking about, new beginnings, resolutions, that kind of thing. And it's a Marcus Aurelius quote, and it's, think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly. And I really like that. I think that sums up your ethos and, where you've got to in life. And I think that's quite a powerful thing to explore. What's your take on that quote?
So I think a lot of times, even when people realize that there's a mismatch in how they have been living and what they think they should be living like, they dwell on the past. Oh, this is how I should have been. And, they think about it, how it's too late. But, it's just like, the best time to plant a tree. One was like best time to plant like a mango tree. One was 10 years ago and the other time's right now. So I think same thing with pursuing purpose or pursuing the new goal in your life.
Yeah. So basically get out there and start.
Yeah, there is no alternative. There are no shortcuts. You have to do the work. The one thing I would say is like make the first step as small, as little scary as possible, because it's only after taking the first step you get the inspiration to take another, and then you just never look back.
And now I'm so excited to announce the return of our regular wildlife slot in the form of Benny's Insect of the Week, hosted by the incomparable and super talented Benny Hawksby. Huge thanks to Benny for this. I'm sure you'll all join me in thanking him. Please go and find him on Instagram at Benny Hawksby, B spelled as in Bumble, so appropriate. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Benny.
The common carder bee, scientific name Bombus piscorum. Now, this was the first bee that I ever learned to identify. This was the first bee that my mum and I, on a bumblebee safari in South Wales, would you believe, with the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, this was the bee that we could identify and remember the name of. So that was quite a thing for us. It is thankfully still a common species. Not all wildlife with the name common is still common, sadly, if you think of frogs and toads. But the common card is doing really well at the minute, and it's adapted well to gardens and public space where there is floral availability and suitable nesting sites. Now, it is a generalist or a polylectic species, which means it can collect pollen from a wide range of plants, from a wide range of families or plant genera. And that is really crucial for it. It's also been quite adaptable in terms of where it can nest. I've had it nesting in the sides of chicken wire leaf bins, which is really cool. That kind of surface level nest on meadows and grass, where it's been uncut for some months. So that's another place to kind of bear in mind, not cutting all the vegetation, not cutting all your lawn, leaving some rough edges, especially when they get a little bit mossy. So it's been quite adaptable in terms of nesting. In terms of identification, there are two other doppelgangers, the brown-banded carder and the moss carder. Now, these are much scarcer species, so they are less commonly encountered in your garden, let's say. But superficially and visually, they can look very, very similar. They can also be quite a little bit variable in terms of how fresh they are, whether it's a male worker or a queen as well. So those things to bear in mind. But the two scarcer species don't have any black hairs on their abdomen at all. So that's one of the separation features for identification. But there are some really good resources available online for identification of bumblebees. The Bumblebee Conservation Trust is my go-to place, or has been. And there's always lots of people to run it by if you get some good photographs. Now, I would love you all to keep an eye out this spring, summer for your first bee, if you've not already got your eye in on some species. And the common carder, I think, is a really good place to start. It was the gateway bee for me, I guess. And We have so much amazing wildlife out there, especially insects. So please do tag me in, and we'll hopefully learn some more ideas together.
Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Robin and found it thought-provoking, whether it's about purpose, happiness, or living more intentionally. If this episode resonated with you, you might also enjoy Permaculture Planting with Pippa Chapman, or The Nature of Resilience with Nick Wilson, both of which explore how our relationship with the natural world shapes the way we live. You'll find links to Robin's work in the show notes, and thank you as always for listening. Oh, and by the way, we are looking for a sponsor for Benny's Insect of the Week segment, so if this is of interest, please email hello@rootsandall.co.uk. You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.